My name is Sherry Guess, and this is the Heavily Meddled Podcast. On this podcast, I interview patients, medical professionals, and industry insiders, having important discussions regarding the all too commonly experienced but lesser identified symptoms of hypersensitivity to metals contained in implanted medical and dental hardware. These metals often cause a variety of dysfunctional immune responses, chronic pain, and other syndromes that fly under the radar of most patients and physicians. During these interviews, the patients and I discuss ideas for managing symptoms, share personal lifestyle modifications, and talk about how to advocate with and educate providers pre- and post-surgery, along with options found for implant removal and the how-to of adverse event reporting. This podcast does not give medical advice. From time to time, I may interview medical professionals that render personal opinions you can use to follow up with your individual provider. Let's roll. Hello, metalheads, and welcome to the jungle. Thanks for coming back to this edition of the Heavily Meddled Podcast. Today, we have our special guest, Julene, with us. She is coming to us from Pennsylvania, and she's going to share her story of metal hypersensitivity with us, and I'm going to be learning her story along with you. I met Julene online, and we became fast friends, and I said, you have to come on the podcast to tell your story, and she graciously said, okay. So Here we are. Welcome, Julene.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about who you are, your family, your personal life, as much as you're willing to divulge, and let us know what your likes and dislikes and who you are before metal allergies.
In high school, I was a band geek. I was a horn player. I married a band geek, and we had two boys who are also in band. One is now in college in Texas, outside of Dallas, and he has recently stopped playing in band, but my younger, who's a senior in high school, is still continuing to do his percussion thing. So we're at marching band contests a lot, concert band contests, drum corps. He does drum corps in the summer. So we follow him around doing that. So mostly right now, marching band is our life. But last year, and my kids are both grown and flown, and I'm sure things will be a little different for us.
Awesome. And you're originally from the South, but now living on the East Coast-ish.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds awesome. What kind of horn did you play?
I was a French horn player.
Nice. My son plays trumpet and French horn.
Yeah. My husband was a clarinet, bass clarinet, and tuba player. And then my oldest played tuba, and then my youngest is percussion.
Oh, that's so awesome. I want to play drums. That's my new thing. I want to get a drum set and set it up in the garage and play, like, exercise to heavy metal music. It's like bucket list thing for me. So I'm going to do that, but I can't play horn to save my life. My son's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us, start at the beginning and tell us your metal allergy story. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of questions, but tell it, pretend you're in a doctor's office. Tell me the whole thing, start at the beginning, and you can tell me everything that's related, not related, and let's play with it.
Okay. I think it was New Year's Eve or December 30th, right around there of 2021, we went out that night and I stepped off a curb. The curb was about this high. It wasn't even a normal big curb with the big yellow lines on it, right? Just a small one. And I heard this huge pop in my knee and I literally couldn't move. I was just standing there going, okay, somebody's going to need to come help me get to the table. And so after dinner, limped me back to the car, and I was like, maybe I've torn my meniscus again. I had been known to do that. I babied it for a few days. Then it hurt so bad, I went to the ER, and they ended up just giving me steroids and all the things to help you cope. Got through that for a while. But come March, I still could not walk on it. It hurt so bad. I finally gave in and went to a doctor, an orthopedic doctor, because they're also hard to get into. Got in and they're like, you've torn your meniscus almost all the way through. Had that repaired in May of 22.
Do they use any metal in a meniscus repair surgery ever?
Not in my knee that I know of. I'm sure the instruments were metal.
Sure.
But not only did he just go in and repair the tear, but he cleaned out behind my knee all the arthritis. Had a lot of arthritis in there, and drilled what they call micro drilling, I believe it's called, into the back of my knee that was supposed to, I think, stimulate collagen growth. I had that surgery. I was non-weight bearing for 3 weeks, so I needed a lot of help. My mom came and helped me, and I could not have done it without her because 3 weeks of hobbling around on crutches is really hard.
Oh,
and got through that, started PT at the end of the 3 weeks, started bearing weight, and PT was going well for 2 to 3 weeks. I felt good. I was walking around, and then all of a sudden I wasn't. And I don't even remember the transition of exactly when it started hurting so bad I could barely walk again, but it was a different hurt. This wasn't just my knee. This went from the top of my leg to my ankle. And I went to the doctor and he said, let's try cortisone shot because that's the go-to. My other knee is actually my bad knee. It's actually the one that needed to be replaced, which has yet to be replaced. But that knee was taking the weight, bearing the brunt of me limping around on my other leg. And so I went to the doctor and the things he didn't work. And I ended up going on the recommendation of a friend to see a different doctor. And he said, oh, your knee needs to be replaced. And I really didn't want to do that. That was not in the list of things I wanted to do. And that doctor also said to me, why are you here for your right knee? It looks okay. Your left knee looks terrible. I'm like, this is the leg that hurts. Like my entire leg hurts. So I ended up going to his PT for a while. Didn't really mesh with that doctor. He didn't really listen at all. It was run in, run out.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to go try another doctor. So I went and got another opinion, a second opinion on the leg pain. This one said, you've either torn your outer meniscus or you got IT band syndrome. Because my entire leg, it just hurt to step down.
Except IT band doesn't go all the way below the knee.
No, that should have stayed up around my knee, right?
Sure. Right. And nobody went to implant foreign body reaction, metal allergy.
I haven't even had a replacement at this point. This was just the repair.
Okay, got it.
So I went to, after that, I did some more PT, went to a third doctor about the pain. Again, this doctor was like, you really need your knee replaced. So after
on what grounds? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like what grounds? What basis were they saying?
Arthritis. My arthritis is really bad. Like my entire body is just riddled with it.
Okay.
So they're like, a knee replacement, there's very little space in that joint. And so they're like, that'll help your pain. Not doing much research, just going on the fact that I'd had pretty much 3 doctors say you need a knee replacement. I did it. So we did that in September of 22. So had the original correction to the meniscus in May, and in September of 22 had the replacement.
So when you decide to have the replacement, did you interview multiple surgeons, and did any of them come up and suggest metal or any hypersensitivity testing prior to your surgery?
The one that I did choose to go with actually said, do you react to jewelry? And I was like, my neck turns green if I wear cheap jewelry, because I knew nothing about metal sensitivity, but I don't typically wear a lot of jewelry. When I wear jewelry, it is almost always gold. Reacting to jewelry was not something I really even knew I did.
And turning green isn't, in my experience, is not necessarily an allergy. Turning green is just a chemical thing. The allergy really turns into more of a rash and systemic stuff. So if I were a doctor and you told me you turned green when you wore anything, that wouldn't really raise my curiosity.
And so that was my answer. My neck turns green sometimes, but not always. But again, I tend to wear gold jewelry.
Yes.
So I didn't have a lot of reference at that point.
Sure.
So had the knee surgery on the 22nd of September. And those who've had it know it's a brutal surgery. I was doing okay. I had one spot, and I promise you it was only about this big, that just really hurt. It felt like a bolt of a screw or something. It was that specific on the side of my knee that just wouldn't stop hurting. I could deal with the aches and pains of the surgery and the nerve twinges and stuff, but that spot just kept hurting and kept hurting. And it just kept getting worse. And I even took a picture of it on October 5th and sent it to my surgeon saying, this spot, and it was just a little bit red. Again, the size of a nickel, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a quarter. And said, this spot is killing me.
Yeah.
You just need time to heal. You're only a few weeks out. So I kept going to PT. My PT pushed me to the point of almost tears in my sessions. I would come home crying just about every day. I hurt all over. As it went along, I finally graduated. I could walk a little way and I was doing okay. It hurt, but it's a 6 month to a year recovery. So I didn't think anything above and beyond the normal hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around month 9, I started to just feel sick. I felt like I had the flu. My entire body hurt. I didn't want to get out of bed. It hurt to even walk to the bathroom. I didn't even want to get up and make a glass of water. I started taking allergy meds every day because I had this really hoarse voice. I had been screaming at a hockey game. And I'd never had anything more than a day or two of seasonal allergies. I was never one to take Flonase or Zyrtec more than a day or two during the spring or fall. So taking it every day was new for me, but it alleviated the hoarseness a little bit. And I just overall felt a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Found myself taking Tylenol more often just for aches and pains. And the longer it went on, the worse I got. So right after 9 months, I was like, I am miserable. I went to my primary care at the time and I said, I can't think straight. I feel like I have the flu all the time. My hair is falling out. It looks horrible. And those are all also premenopausal symptoms, right?
Sure.
So again, we started looking down that route, doing blood tests. All my blood tests would always come up normal, but I kept telling the doctors, I feel horrible. Yeah. I am, and they're like, oh, you're a little overweight. I'm overweight. I'm not going to lie to you. I've always been overweight, but I've always been a doer. Mm-hmm. I love to do things. I love to craft. Yeah. I love to go to my kids' performances. For the first time, I was wanting to sit at home and not go see my kids, but I would make myself. And it got to the point where I couldn't sleep without painkillers. And it just kept going downhill and downhill.
Now, was it your whole leg at this point still? Was it focused around your knee? It was your whole body? Where was it?
It was around my knee at this point after the surgery, from 6 inches, 5 or 6 inches above to 5 or 6 inches below.
But as far as the whole knee pain that you had prior to surgery, that was calmed?
It was interesting. I would tell the doctor, it's only the outside of my leg that hurts. Like the inside of my knee felt fine. My kneecap felt fine. It was that little band right around the outside edge. Right? I ended up deciding I was in enough pain. I wanted a second opinion because I'd told my doctor at least 3 different times or 4 different times, I really hurt. You just need time to heal. You just need time to heal. And clearly they weren't actually listening. So I decided to get a second opinion and I went to another doctor in the Austin area, and that office required, before I could even look at a revision, doing a metal test through orthopedic analysis. I'm like, okay, I'll do it, but I don't understand why.
Do you feel comfortable saying the name of the practice?
All Star Orthopedics.
All Star Orthopedics in Austin. Good for them for suggesting that. That's awesome. Yeah.
She would not do the revision unless I had done the metal allergy test. I was like, okay, I'll do it. It's expensive, but I was curious at this point. At least she was willing to look at something.
And did she come up with she came up with the metal allergy test thing? That was just her protocol?
That was their protocol, not mine. That was not for me. She very quickly said, oh yes, your knee is very unstable. Like she could take the bottom half of my leg and move it. And she's, your knee is very unstable. And typically instability can come from a metal allergy. It's not the only reason, but it is one of the reasons. So therefore, we went down that path. I didn't even know to come off my antihistamines for that test. Did the test. And I guess the test goes like anything under 4 is considered non-reactive, 4 to 8 is sensitive, and over 8 is highly sensitive or allergic. And mine came back about a 20. Yeah.
I've never seen a 20.
Yeah.
Oh,
it
you'll
was
have
pretty
to send
high.
it to me and we'll take your name off it. We'll take your identifying information. We'll put it in the show notes. You'll have to send it to me. I want to put that up in the show notes. That would be amazing.
So I guess they look at 3 different levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one was at like 20, one was just into the 8 range. And I want to say the other one was just below 4. So it was really interesting, the difference. And so when I was listening to his podcast saying, yeah, we look at 3, not 2 different areas of sensitivity, I was like, oh, now I can see why, because all 3 of mine came back at different ranges.
Were they all, was it just nickel or did you have other reactive metals?
None of the others were above like a 2 or 2.5, I believe, if I remember.
So it was all nickel.
Yeah, it was pretty much all nickel. And I actually thought it was going to come back cement or something weird.
Bone cement, yeah, something weird.
And so she's okay. And this was late August, September at this point.
Okay.
Because I ended up having the revision of 23.
Okay.
So almost a year now, or right at a year. And then I had the revision in October of 23. And that, within 3 days of that surgery, my entire body felt better. It was very interesting.
Tell me if this is what you felt like, because I've had now 7 surgeries to remove metal. I'm about to have number 8 to remove metal on Thursday. The thing that I find the most interesting is when you wake up in the OR, your body feels lighter. You can tell you open your eyes. It's like somebody took a weight off your body and you feel like you've lost 10 pounds.
100%. That is what I felt like. And I even told her that before I was actually in the hospital for more than just that day. I actually stayed overnight. And I told her when she came to see me the next day, I was like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like my leg didn't feel like it weighed 100 pounds.
Do you know? So let me go back for a second. On your first knee replacement, do you know what the hardware was? Was there any choice or discussion of what hardware the doctor was going to choose? There was no discussion.
Nope, they chose for me. There was none of that. And so I did have the one that was it was the 3 metals combined. Is it chromium or cobalt? Cobalt and palladium and nickel.
Molybdenum?
It's the one that has I never say them right.
Yeah. So I don't know which one has the 3, like it could be any 3 metals. I'm not an expert on knee replacement. Do you know if it had constitutional nickel in it or not? Was that one of the elements in it, or was it just titanium?
That I don't know. We just, all we knew was that it was unstable, very unstable. I was in a lot of pain and I was to the point of wanting painkillers to be able to walk.
But that doctor, the first doctor, did not give you the option on which knee. He just said, this is the knee we're doing.
No, correct. We didn't even talk about it. And in my head, I didn't even know knees were something other than titanium. Honestly, because my aunt had one and she had a titanium knee.
How many people don't think about that? You're just like, okay, you need a knee. Here's a knee.
Yep. And I didn't even know you needed different knees for different body types and issues and things like that. You know,
okay, so PSA, you need different knees for different body types.
And you trust the doctors to know that kind of thing, but they don't really have enough time to sit and discuss those kinds of things with you. So I trusted, because at this point I had been to my original surgeon, but then 3 more. So
all telling you the same thing. So why not believe them?
Telling you the same thing. You need to have your knee replaced. You need to have that knee replaced.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I do remember asking, okay, my left knee is actually my bad knee, the one that's bone on bone. Can we just do both at the same time if we're going to do one? And they all said no. So I'm like, okay, we'll do this one. And when I recover, we'll do the other one.
Okay.
Thank God we didn't do both.
Oh gosh, can you imagine?
Yeah. So I just kept getting sicker and sicker. My voice kept getting hoarse. Again, hair falling out, but a lot of the symptoms I was having, itching. Oh my gosh, I itched all over. But again, all symptoms that can be related to something else. Did you change your detergent? Did you change your body soap?
Were you reacting to food at this point, or?
A little bit, yes, but I didn't even realize that's what it was. Again, so I started blaming it on other things. So my bowels started to change, and I started to get upset stomachs when I would drink coffee or eat certain things. And I'm like, okay, I'm just getting old.
Any cardiac symptoms, palpitations?
Yep. But I always noticed that more if I drank more than 1 cup of caffeine a day. So I kept my caffeine to just the 1 drink in the morning. And if I had more, I would notice. One of the big things, and again, didn't even relate it back at the time, I would tell my neurologist, when I go to lay down, honestly, night was worse for me than the days. When I would lay down, I would feel like I would get just like this electric shock. Like I put my finger in a socket and it would just zap through my body, but then it would quit. But then I would have nerve pain, a lot of nerve pain. And I have degenerative discs in my back. I have 3 pretty bad discs in my lower back. So again, it was put off to, it's your back. You're limping around. And so we upped the gabapentin. So I went from taking 1 gabapentin at night to sleep to taking 4 plus Tylenol plus, honestly.
So insomnia was a big thing for you, not just from pain, because that was my first symptom too. Is all of a sudden I couldn't sleep no matter what I took.
Yes. And it was starting to affect work too. When I went to the doctor and I told her I cannot sleep. I can't think straight. Like they even MRI'd my brain. Like that's how bad it had gotten from my normal. I could not complete a sentence and I still lose words. I tend to miss and can't find nouns a lot of times, but I almost couldn't complete a sentence sometimes. And again, it's not like all of these symptoms were 100% all of the time. Sure. So you blame it on old age, you blame it on hormonal changes, you blame it on something you ate. The metal thing
looking back
never
now,
even
you can see that it came on a few months after surgery.
Yes. And we'll talk about how I laid that out in a little bit. But so she required we do the metal testing. And when it came back, she said, okay, we can do your knee. And I was like, let's do it as soon as possible. Like I didn't want to wait anymore at this point. So we jumped on it. I did it in October.
Now, hang on. What did she give you a choice of knees at this point?
She told me that we would be doing all titanium.
Okay. And it's 100% titanium. There's no,
It's a Zimmerman Persona titanium. When I look online, it doesn't appear to have nickel. But then again, from what I understand and just what I've read, that almost all titanium has some nickel in it.
For those just tuning in who don't know, the FDA does not require trace elements to be listed. And even though the implant may have no constitutional nickel, all surgically pure titanium is an alloy and usually has trace nickel. And for those sensitive to nickel, they can react. And this is like the big thing that doctors are crickets over, and they just don't understand that just because it's titanium, and we are seeing more titanium allergies too, but people are reacting to trace nickel in pure titanium implants, and doctors don't know.
And I almost would be curious if I redid the metal test, if my titanium numbers have gone up from what they were a year ago.
I was curious. You mean titanium as far as toxicity or ions or just titanium numbers on the test?
Yeah, just titanium numbers on that orthopedic analysis test. You wonder if how much your body is reacting to what's in your body at the time. At the time, it was a nickel.
I've got a ton of metal and all titanium, and I'm very reactive to metals, and I still don't show positive to titanium.
Yeah, and it was just one of those. I would just be curious. I don't know the science behind it anything.
We wish we had the test and we could just do it like every week.
Honestly, I just want the answers. I think is what I want, right? I just want the answers to be better. And so we look for anything, right?
Okay, so she's going to go from the cobalt chromium that we're assuming, vanadium to the pure titanium. She didn't give you a choice. She just said, we're going with this knee.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, the first knee, it just came to me, was the Exact Tech knee.
Okay.
I think it was a CS, I believe. There's a CS and a CR, and
Okay.
Let's see, it was a CS. But anyway, so the exact technique. And about that time, we also discovered that the exact technique was being recalled. I did write in about my lot numbers, and my lot numbers were not on that recall. So a lot of people got infections from the way it had been packaged or something. So mine was not on that list of the recall. But at this time, we went ahead and changed the knee. Again, woke up in the hospital already feeling different. It was amazing how much better my body felt. And of course, she dismissed that. No, it doesn't really affect people that way. But I also didn't present with a rash like everybody else had. My leg was not rashy. I itched some around my knee, but not enough that I was clawing and scratching.
Do you have any rashes elsewhere on your body, not just around your knee? Like any kind of weird place that would show up?
At the time, I would get some on my chest.
Okay.
But it didn't occur to me that it could have been like when I would wear jewelry. But again, if I wore it, I would wear it to go out occasionally and take it off when I got home. But then I'd be like, why is my chest all broken out? Why do I have a rash on my chest? But never made those connections at the time. Now I just don't wear jewelry on my chest and I don't break out.
Sure. Yeah.
And I did find a pair of earrings I can successswarovski wear. So I'm
lucky. I can wear 925 sterling and I do all the time without really any issues. So I'm lucky, but
Swarovski has a lot of solid silver that are considered nickel free. Yeah. And I don't react to those. So
that's great.
I will, that's typically where I shop. I have my one or two pairs that I wear and that's about it.
Okay. So let's go back. So you had the first knee, then you wake up, you feel amazing. Now that we've had the second knee, and then what happened from there?
I was doing great. I was going to PT. At this point, I had a new physical therapist who I had done a little bit of prehab with him as well, and absolutely loved him. He was phenomenal. When I was doing the prehab, the previous PT, well, actually 3 different PTs that I'd gone to, they just pushed me to the point of just not wanting to do PT at all. Right.
Right.
And he wasn't like that. And he would also work my knee. And when he got in there, he's like, you have a knot the size of a golf ball behind your knee. Huh. I don't know if that was a lymph node or if that was a knot from my knee being unstable from skating around on that knee, so to speak. But he was phenomenal. When she had gone in there to change the knee, she said, your knee was loose, the bottom half, the plate, not only front to back, but side to side. You were skating on that knee every day.
That hurts.
That is partially why I was in so much pain, right? Because it took so much effort to walk.
That's probably why the outside hurt, because you're like doing this.
Yes, correct. And the new titanium knee didn't feel that way. I immediately felt stable on that knee, and I still feel actually very stable. I can stand on that leg better than I can stand on my left leg that needs a knee replacement. For longer and without wobbling more.
All right.
It still hurts, and it's still got some problems. It's also unstable, but that's a little bit down the story. Okay. So PT was going great. I had a lot of scar tissue. And when I say a lot, I had a shelf, what she calls a shelf, about this high of scar tissue. You could see where they had cut, where the bone had gone, where the plate was. It was more than an inch high. It was awful looking. It looked like a ridge going around the front of my leg. And it wasn't painful. It limited my mobility a little bit as far as bending. I immediately got to a straight leg, no problem. But bending it was a little bit harder. And so my PT would massage it. I would work in PT. And this time going around in PT, I actually could do more. And I could push harder. And I could do things I hadn't been able to do the entire first year. And I was so excited. For 8 weeks, things were going really well.
Great.
Sometime in January of 24, I was laying in bed and I went to push up, almost bridge, when you push up on your knees to shift into the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a huge pop. And I was like, well, that hurt. And I sat there and was like, okay, I'm not sure what to do. I went to put my foot down and I could stand up. I'm like, okay, I must be okay. I'm not sure what the pop was, but I feel okay.
And then you have a little bit of PTSD from the last thing.
You're like,
oh, stop. It's crazy. This is a new knee. I'm fine.
I've broken my new knee. Because of that scar tissue, we had decided in December to start cortisone shots. She injected it to try to break up the scar tissue.
Okay.
And subsequent doctors after I moved said it was likely scar tissue popping loose. It's probably all that was.
Okay.
That's why I heard it. It was a little painful, but I could stand and do all those normal things.
Sure.
So about January, about when that happened, I wrapped up with PT. I was strong. I could walk. I could go down an incline for the first time in months. Like I couldn't even walk down my driveway, which is barely an incline, to go get the mail. I couldn't even do that. And I could do all of those things. I was feeling better. We moved. So my husband got a job in February and we ended up moving.
Okay.
So came here, and the more I was up and moving, you're in the middle of the move. So no matter how bad you're hurting, you're like, I'm just unloading boxes. I'm doing a lot of these things. And it just got to where things hurt more and more again.
Oh.
And I was like, I can't go down this road again. Why am I hurting? So having moved here to Pennsylvania, I was like, I need a new doctor. Anyway, got a new doctor, went to him, and he took his x-rays. He's, oh no, you've got to have a new knee. It's your post is rotated. And I said, before we go down that route, I've already had a recent surgery. I said, I need you to know I'm allergic to nickel. And he goes, that's just phooey. And I was like,
he said, that's
okay.
just what?
Phooey. Those were literally his exact words.
He said, that's just phooey, that you're allergic to
just
nickel.
Phooey. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I said, I have a blood test from orthopedic analysis. He goes, I don't buy into that. And I said, okay, bye. And I left that doctor's office and I didn't go back. And I let my primary care know that I'd had a miserable experience. She goes, well, try this place. I went to the next place. He didn't have an issue with the fact that I had a nickel allergy. He was very thorough in his exam. Even when he was doing his x-rays, I don't know if I can even, he moved my knee like that, took the bottom of my leg so that he could see, was the plate separating from the knee again? Okay. Or was I having the same issues again? Like, he was very thorough. And he said, ultimately, what I think it is, and he's probably right, my knee is subluxating, is hyperextending. So my knee is going too far backwards, allowing my kneecap to subluxate out of place.
Okay.
So my kneecap would slide and it would get very painful and I couldn't walk at all. But if I went and laid in the bed overnight, very still on my side, sleep on my side, it almost like it would just slide back into place once the muscles relaxed. And so I started wearing a brace to keep my knee from hyperextending, and that helped. But again, I'm like, I'm not rushing into another surgery. I think we just need to replace the spacer this time. And he said, I think it's too short. I think we need to make it bigger. And that will stop your knee from hyperextending and your kneecap from subluxating. And I'm like, okay. In the meantime, I'm like, I'm not jumping into another surgery. I got on the list for Mayo and I happened to get in fairly quickly. So I went to Mayo Clinic and they did the full x-ray, the full exam. And I think it's loose at your femur, not at your knee plate. Okay. So now my original doctor in Texas, right before I left, and I'd gone to her, and it's slightly unstable, but that's because you're heavy. And I'm like, And that was the answer. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of people heavier than me that have knees that work.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I had been doing phenomenal in PT, but that was right around the time I left and I moved. So I never looked back. Got the new doctor who thought the nickel allergy was phooey. Went to the next doctor and I think your spacer is incorrect, which to me made a lot of sense because I actually have a sacralization that goes from L5 down to my hip. It looks like a number 7. It connects my L5 to my hip. So my hips are never level. One is always pulled, and because my vertebra doesn't move the way it's supposed to. So my hips will never be level. So if the spacer isn't big enough on the short leg, then it does take more weight when I limp. So we can fix the spacer and it'll be an easier surgery. And then I went to Mayo and they said, it's probably your spacer, but also the femur. So at this point, I've had 4 different people say 4 different things, and I'm not rushing into a 4th surgery until 2 people say the same thing.
At least.
So I've decided that I'm not in a hurry to fix this one. I am mobile. I can at least walk from the parking lot to the stands to watch my son perform and back out to the parking lot.
And that's where we are today. We're on hold.
That's where I am
for
today.
Potential revision number 3.
Yeah.
Has anybody talked about the metal components of the knee?
And nobody really discusses that. The current surgeon I'm seeing now, he did an MRI of my leg to find a healed femur stress fracture.
Okay.
And he said it's an old injury. And I'm like, is that what was actually wrong with my leg back in 22?
So even though we know you're allergic to nickel, you had some resolution, and
I still have pain.
I'm going to put forward that I've seen this before. People with metal allergies that have a revision, the metal's removed, they feel fantastic, and then a few months later, all the symptoms creep back because the allergy is a delayed type 4 hypersensitivity, and it takes the body, the antigens and the T cells that long to react to the new knee. So I'm interested in why they're not looking more at the allergy as a component rather than the mechanics. So we're holding for a new knee revision. So you talked about some other things that you have concerns about in regards to nickel in your body. And I think you said that you had implemented a low nickel diet. So let's go talk about the other things and kind of how it's all developing for you.
Once I started getting on Facebook and doing some reading and listening to some of your podcasts, it was quite eye-opening. I have also had other surgeries. I've had a gastric sleeve 5 or 6 years ago, and it says most of them do use staples to close your stomach. I had a hysterectomy, and I've had carpal tunnel and ulnar nerve surgery. And all of those have the potential where they can put clips. Not all of them do. Again, when I'm reading, some of them notate in the record, some don't. So I am currently in the process of gathering all of those records. I did get the one from my bariatric doctor, and I do have staples, but they're very tiny.
They are.
Oh, okay, but they're still in there.
And I told you privately, but I'll just say on camera that I just had a pelvic surgery in February that implanted 4 small titanium microplates, and I was on half an antihistamine 1 time per day. And these little microplates they put in are the size of the white line on my pinky fingernail. There's 4 of them. They're teeny. And I am having so many symptoms: hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia. I'm back to 3 antihistamines a day. I'm breaking out in hives with low nickel foods. And thank goodness, those plates come out on Thursday, and it cannot be soon enough. So it doesn't matter how tiny they are. And I've had this with my gallbladder clips too, that these tiny things can cause massive reactions. And I think that's the part of the narrative that needs to change.
And I do think my primary care has been very good about listening to me on this. I actually forwarded her the podcast on orthopedic analysis that you did. And she said, I love podcasts. I will listen to this. And awesome. On the one where the guy from the UK is talking about the different metals, how different metals react in your body. I have a gold bridge. I did have a nickel bridge and could not breathe. So right about the time the nickel knee came out, the nickel bridge came out as well. And a gold one went in. Yeah. And that opened up all of my sinuses. And a lot of the hoarseness went away as well. But the knee and the bridge were within about.
Okay, that's really important. So the bridge is as big a component for you as the knee was. It sounds, but a different set of symptoms all filling the bucket at the same time.
Yep.
How long had you had the nickel bridge?
Less than a year.
Okay, so this all came in at the same time.
Yep. I had that one done when I moved into Texas. I cracked my ceramic one because I'm a really bad tooth grinder. And so they put in the nickel one or the metal one, it would be stronger. And then just shortly after that, I had the first knee put in. And as soon as I had the other knee revised and the nickel taken out, that one went out too. And I know you're not supposed to have dental surgery and all of that. I did it anyway. I felt that bad.
Okay, so what does your dentist say about the nickel bridge versus the
the new dentist here doesn't. We haven't even talked about it. The gold one was put in Texas. I cracked a crown and they put in a new crown when I moved here. I've had 13 crowns in my head. I cracked my teeth.
Okay. So I wonder, and this is something I don't know if you're aware of, but you've got to look at the porcelain fused to metal crowns. You could have metal in those crowns as well.
Oh, I'm sure. And I think I actually still have one or two of the old amalgam fillings from when I was young. So I have a dentist appointment this week and we'll be talking about that.
Make sure it goes for you and for anybody else in the podcast. If you have that removed, get an IAOMT dentist to remove that. They have to be removed a very certain way. You've got to go to somebody certified in removing amalgams. Don't just go to your regular run-of-the-mill dentist and have that removed. They actually
those are things you don't even know.
So that, yes, IAOMT. I don't even ask me what it stands for. International Alliance of Oral and Maxillofacial. I don't know, something. But yeah, an IAOMT holistic dentist. They have to be certified in safe mercury amalgam removal, or you will have a whole host of other problems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. If that was the dentist you're going to and he's not certified in that safe removal technique, cancel it and go. I will say that unabashedly. Cancel it and go somewhere else. You have to have it removed carefully.
And I was having a lot of jaw pain. Again, but I grind, right? So jaw pain, I've always had jaw pain, but it was a lot worse and a lot of twitching over here. And that bridge contains 3 of those teeth back there. And most of that has gone away. I still get some twitching in the eye when I'm fatigued from looking at the screen for a long time. But the just constant clenched feeling in my mouth is pretty much gone.
So you said you found the podcast. So, like, how did you get from the orthopedic test in the surgeon's office to investigating more about metal hypersensitivity? Did you find my podcast first? Did you find Facebook groups? Did you find a website? What did you find?
Facebook.
First?
Yeah, I found it on Facebook. I think I ended up Googling just nickel allergies, and that's where I ended up watching.
Yeah, and you found me first versus some of the other groups? Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you're here. Obviously, you're supposed to tell your story. Tell me what the order was, where the bells and whistles went off. How did it all fall into your lap? In what order?
After you and I started chatting, one of the things you sent me was, here is some of the symptoms that people with metal allergies have reported, right? Not everybody has every symptom. Everybody's things are different. So what I actually did,
and the symptoms aren't exclusive to metal allergies. They can be symptoms of many other things.
Yeah. But I'd been to a endocrinologist. I'd been to my primary care. I'd had MRIs. I'd had all my blood tests. They all kept coming back normal. Every time I think, oh, it's this or oh, it's that. And I would do things like start progesterone because they're like, you are menopausal age and that kind of thing. So I would do what they recommend and I would get a little bit better. But I took all the surgeries I've had and laid them out in order in the columns because I'm an analyst. And then I took all of the symptoms and I listed them down this side. And I started putting in when I went to the doctor about certain symptoms, like my hair falling out or the electric shock feeling. And then I would give it a color code. If it was yellow, it bothered me a little bit. If it was orange, it bothers me a lot, but not necessarily every day, enough to ask a doctor about it or see a doctor about it. And then red, if it just affects my everyday life. And I had an extensive list. I actually sent that to my primary care.
I want to see it. Can we show it on the podcast?
Oh, yeah. I'll have to send it to you.
I definitely want to see that.
Yeah. So I could then look at the progression that I would go to the doctor about my blurred eyes, my eyes just being really blurry, like not being able to focus, or when my hair was falling out and my brain fog was so bad, I could not think straight. That was at the time my knee was the worst, when I had the nickel knee in. And even things like, would have never thought my glasses. I switched to different frames this year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you realize I don't have a big red indentation on each side of my face anymore that's bright red, that I'm embarrassed to take my glasses off anymore?
And you just thought it was from wearing the glasses.
Just thought it was from wearing the glasses. I don't have that anymore, just because I have the plastic glasses now. Just things you don't even notice. Like I had a while back, I let a friend, we pierced my ear up top, right? And we put in a surgical stainless steel post, and I loved it, but it kept getting infected and getting a huge bubble of infection on the back, and went to the doctor and they cleaned it up and did all the antibiotics, but it just kept coming back. When I took it out, all of that went away.
Isn't it funny? It's once you know that it's a metal allergy, the dots just go, yes, just like connect them all.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and I want to say it was you said, have you looked into the low nickel allergy diet? So I Googled it and I saw the book. And so I got the book and I started reading it. And I'm like, son of a biscuit. There's some things on here that I eat every day that are very high in nickel. I'm going to pick almonds, which I love almond creamer in my coffee.
Oh.
I don't like coffee with milk. I like it okay, but I love it with almond creamer.
You're not the only one that said that.
And then processed cheese, which was slicey cheese or Velveeta. I love an egg with a slice of American cheese on top of it. So I would have coffee with almond creamer, thinking I'm doing good because I'm having almond creamer, and an egg with a piece of sliced cheese on it for breakfast.
Egg and cheese are probably harmless.
And soy was the other one that I would have almost every day. I love soy sauce. I tend to cook when I'm home. I tend to cook Asian. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to give up the creamer first. And all of a sudden I wasn't running to the bathroom after having my coffee. And I'm like, oh, darn, I really loved that creamer. So maybe there's something to it. So then I cut out the American cheese. But then I went out a couple nights later with my mom.
But the cheese doesn't have nickel in it. So how?
It's apparently the way it's processed.
Okay. Tell me.
Yeah. I don't know. In that book, she talks about the cheeses that are highest in nickel are processed cheeses like Velveeta and like the sliced American cheese, because of the way they're processed.
And you're talking about Laura Douzette's The Low Nickel Diet Cookbook, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have the book. Sorry, Laura, I have not had time to go through the book yet, but I guess I need to look at the cheese section since I'm a massive cheese eater.
Yeah, and I love cheese. I do too. And so now I'm buying the blocks of cheddar cheese and shredding it, and I seem to be doing okay with that.
Great.
And I can handle, I'm not eating a large amount of cheese, but like in the morning, I've switched to having just a little bit of goat cheese on my egg, and I seem to be handling that just fine. I got the Fig app where you can put in your allergies, and I put in nickel and soy and tree nuts, because if I'm reacting to the almond, maybe I'm reacting to other nuts as well.
Sure.
And it pretty much cut out everything I like to eat. So I would go around the grocery store. So oh my gosh. And I haven't tested those yet. I do love cashews. I don't eat them very often, but
yeah, forget it. They're terrible.
Yeah. And I love chocolate. And of course, chocolate's on the high nickel diet. But I know within just a few days of cutting out the almond creamer, the sliced cheese, and the soy, I felt a world better. Like I was like, I can function for the first time in almost 2 years. Like, I cleaned out my closet. I felt good enough to do something besides just put the dishes in the dishwasher, and that was all I could do when I was done for the day. I actually could focus for 4 or 5 hours and do something. Now, I was sore at the end of it.
So take that, all of you that say the low nickel diet is not a thing.
Oh, it is so a thing. And then I went out to dinner with my mother, and I was like, I'm not really supposed to have soy sauce. And she goes, the tamari is made from soy, but it's gluten-free. So just do a little bit. I just do a little bit. And the next day I was miserable. And I'm like, okay, soy is definitely a trigger.
Yeah, you just get to the point where it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. But then I had no idea soy was in almost every single bread, almost everything that we would eat. It's pasta. I'm like, isn't pasta just wheat? No, pasta has soy or soy lecithin. I'm not even sure I'm saying it right. It's an emulsifier. Lecithin. Yeah. It's an emulsifier to make things. And
yeah, I do okay with soy lecithin, more or less.
And I haven't gotten to the point where I've added anything like that back in yet. I am pretty much eating my egg with goat cheese. And in lunch, I'll have some tuna. And I'm trying to do the tuna out of the packet versus the tuna out of the can.
Yeah, I think that tuna is going to light you on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love tuna.
Yeah, and I do love tuna. And I also just got some turkey. And so I've cut it way down, and then I'm trying to add things in and see how do I feel that day. And I'm finding that within a half an hour of eating, say, soy, I start coughing. My husband made dinner, and I was okay at first, and then I just started coughing and coughing and coughing. And when we went and actually looked, one of the spices had soy in it. Which was not something we would have thought about.
A spice.
Yeah. We've started scanning. I've started scanning everything. And
what's the name of the app again? That's an app I have not heard of.
Fig. I did pay for it. I think it was $60 for the year. But I literally can open the app in the grocery store and scan it. And if I say I have a nickel allergy, it will flag it red. Do not eat this. Yellow, it might contain something that'll set you off. Or green, it's good. There's a Jewish rye that apparently is a bread that's good for tree nuts and nickel and soy. I cannot freaking find that brand anywhere.
I need Fig to come sponsor the podcast, Fig, so I can use your app.
I really enjoyed this app, and there's only been 1 or 2 obscure things that it didn't have in its database, and I think you can even submit them, but I'm new enough to the app that I haven't even gotten to that point. But I have gone from feeling, and I'm not going to lie, there were times before this revision to the titanium knee when I had the knee that had more nickel in it, and I would sit and just wonder, why am I on this earth? Because I am miserable, but I'm a fighter, and I have kids, and I have a family, and I'm like, I will keep pushing until I figure out what's wrong.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Attention metalheads. Are you struggling with skin rashes, joint and systemic pain, or fatigue that just won't go away? Type 4 metal allergy is often overlooked as a culprit in many of today's chronic illnesses. Get to the root of the problem with Melisa testing. Melisa is a scientifically proven and clinically validated test that measures immune reactivity to metal allergens like nickel, cobalt, and titanium. With fast and reliable results, you can get the answers you need to find relief and live a healthier life. Don't let metal allergies control your life any longer. Visit melisa.org to learn more and schedule your test. Trust us, you'll be glad you did. Melisa, a valuable diagnostic tool in medicine.
Okay, we're going to look at something. I sent you, for the podcast listeners who don't know, I need it to pull up though. I sent you and another friend of ours a deal on a non-metal knee, completely metal-free total knee replacement. I'm going to share this to the screen because I want to talk about like where you're going with your next knee. But
yeah, I'm not in a hurry because I want to get this one right, because I know I also need the other knee, and I don't want to be miserable my whole life. I want to enjoy my retirement. My kids are almost grown and flown. I want to enjoy my grandkids, and I want to do those kinds of things in the future.
Okay, I'm putting this up there. Let's look at this together for the podcast guest. Julene is not the only person I know that is having trouble with a knee implant. I have another friend that's had 3 and actually not doing so well. We need to send her, she shall remain nameless, but a lot of good mojo because I think they're recommending amputation. But this was just sent to me, a long-term follow-up of a completely metal-free total knee in comparison to an identical metal counterpart. So this is published in Scientific Reports just this month, but we're going to go down and talks about loosening. I'm just going to scan this really
Loosening
quick.
has been my biggest thing with both of these knees, is that the plates are loose.
So we have a ceramic group with a completely metal-free total knee replacement compared to a conventional group. And I'll put this up in the show notes, but I want to go down and just read the conclusion of this study. First, radiographs of radiolucent lines around the tibial post, the ceramic group. It's really interesting to me.
I remember seeing the lines and stuff, and I was like, I don't think I understand that.
In our conclusion, the BPKS ceramic TKA, which is total knee system, meets the durability and functional performance standards of an established identical metal TKA system after an 8-year follow-up period, offering a safe option for implant for patients with prior hypersensitivity reactions to metallic materials. Recommend full cementation of the entire ceramic bone interface to avoid possible radiolucent lines, even if the clinical consequences still remain unclear. I would say get orthopedic analysis to test for a bone cement allergy prior to that. And I wonder what they do if they have one. That would be a good question for a future Q&A. But they want to establish metal-free designs as standard options for total knee arthroplasty. And I think that's awesome. I'm wondering how big the sample size was.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. And if it's been 8 years.
A 4-year follow-up and then an 8-year follow-up. Ceramic group primarily improved from baseline to 4-year follow-up, then decreased at the final 8-year follow-up. And then at the follow-up, statistically non-significant differences were found in comparison of both groups. 88 patients with a mean age of 69 years enrolled in the prospective observational long-term 8-year follow-up study.
It says ceramic 166, conventional 162, or is that the difference?
I would imagine that's probably, they had 88 in each group, like 88 in the ceramic group,
oh, okay.
In the other, then that would be my, that adds up, right?
Yep. I think I'm not the
stop sharing it, but y'all, I'll put the link to the study in the show notes and you can go find out who this company is, but this could be really good news, a totally non-metallic knee for anybody that might need a knee. Yeah. So do we have a plan with your new surgeon to figure out what next knee or knee components might be if you have to go there? And then how do you go there knowing what you know?
That's why I'm taking my time with this one. I've done it wrong already. I'm not going to do it wrong again. What I don't want is them to dismiss the nickel allergies, even just seeing the improvement of going on the low nickel diet and how much it has affected me and how much better I feel. I don't want them to say, you're doing better. Yeah, I'm doing better, but I'm still not right.
And I'm finding too, like I've got all this nickel and metal that I cannot get out of my body. There's a certain amount of symptoms you have to live with. Would I have not done the surgeries? I absolutely would have done the surgeries. Even if I knew where I was going to end up today, I still would have done the surgeries. But a lot of times I keep telling people it's benefit outweighs risk. Will you have zero pain? No, probably not. Will you ever go back to normal or baseline? No, probably not. But can you function? Yes. Even if it's with pain, can you function and have a reasonable quality of life, even though you have annoying symptoms that you'll have to deal with forever? And that's, I think, really what it comes down to. And you were saying that you're waiting to see rheumatology. One of the podcast episodes I did with Marco Caicedo from Orthopedic Analysis, he's their CFO and a PhD immunologist, said that they are really showing promise with some of the anti-TNF rheumatology drugs to keep the body from having so much reactivity to an implant that has to be there.
And that's why I really want a rheumatologist who's familiar with that, right?
Good
luck.
If
I've got to wait until late February to see one, because in the meantime, we are going to test for infection just to rule that out. And the reason we didn't do it when I was at Mayo is I had been on antibiotics because I had been sick. And my lymph nodes were all swollen. Turns out I also have sarcoidosis. The only place they saw it in the x-ray was in my chest. but the lymph nodes under my arms are swollen. The lymph nodes in my neck are swollen.
I do hear of swelling lymph nodes with metal hypersensitivity. The one that comes to mind is Maria that had the clips in her neck and was having swelling in all the lymph nodes here and in her nose. And they thought it was cancer. And if you haven't seen that episode, go watch it. But they took her clips out and all of that went away. Lymph nodes stopped swelling. So we do see that.
And I even mentioned to the pulmonary doctor, I said, I feel when I lay down on my side, I feel like I'm drowning. And he goes, well, that's up here. We got to refer you to ENT. So now I have to go to ENT. I'm on the list to see ENT and to see rheumatology and to do the infection test for my knee.
Would you report back on that? Because I hear a lot about infections with total knee and total joint replacements. I think I hear more about them with knee. And I'm interested when they culture, are they finding a specific overgrowth of a particular bacteria where they can prove the infection, or is it metal hypersensitivity that looks like infection?
Because my guess is it's sensitivity. And he doesn't think it's an infection. He said your C-reactive proteins are too low. Mine were only at 10, bordering on 11. And he said I would expect it to be up in 20 or 30. But the Mayo Clinic doctor said, you really should rule it out, because not everybody shows symptoms the same way. So I had to be off antibiotics for a certain number of days for that to happen. So when I got back from Mayo, I went to see my doctor, my knee doctor here, and he has been very open. He was like, why did you go to another doctor? And I was just very honest. I said, I've had 4 doctors tell me 4 different things about the same knee, and I'm not willing to go into another surgery without 2 people agreeing. And I really want to know more before I put another metal thing into my body, knowing how badly I react. And he accepted that. And he has been working with me. But again, it's a process. It just takes time. It takes a month to get into this test.
Yes. And we have to educate these doctors, because they don't have time for the education on their own. So even though Julene is not an expert on metal hypersensitivity, I guarantee you more than most of your doctors, and you are paving the way. We are all paving the way for patients that come after us.
And I've been blessed to have a primary care who's doing it with me. She's listening to the podcasts that I send her and reading the literature I send her. And I could not be more lucky, because most people don't have a doctor like that. She is hearing me, and I feel heard for the first time in 3 years. And it's not from my ortho doctor, but I do believe she will continue to help me navigate this fight, because most of the doctors say if it's an allergy, it's a big rash, or if it's an allergy, it's this. And it's not that for everybody. I didn't have a rash except a little tiny red space. And my pain was very pinpointed on the side there. The fact that they wouldn't listen to what I was saying was
really funny for me. I have a crevice on my body that will remain unmentionable. I have a fusion in my low back. And when I would eat certain high nickel foods, I know now, I would break out in these like bleeding, erupting type sores in this crevice. And I could never figure out what it was. And nobody else could figure out what it was. When I finally made the nickel diet connection, that rash comes up in that place about 6 hours after eating nickel. And it's just cause and effect all the time. And the interesting thing to me is it's located near where the metal is.
Oh, yeah. And I did say, I was like, who knew foods had nickel in them? Never would have crossed my mind.
And the stainless steel water bottles, the Yeti and the Stanley.
I just put all of those in a bin to go away. And I bought 2 ceramic lined ones. And first of all, now I don't have 10 Yetis in my cupboard. I'll just
Your
have
cupboard probably
2.
looks amazing.
It does, right? I'm slowly working on getting all those things out.
But it was the stainless steel cookware made a difference for me. The Berkey, which Berkey says it has no nickel, but the Berkey, we all know about that.
Steel. Yep. And those are my favorite pans, the stainless steel, besides my little Ninja pan. So I guess I'm going to go back to
I go to Le Creuset with everything else, which I hear they're high in lead. That's a pick your poison. I'm like, yes, do I drink out of plastic sometimes so I don't drink out of stainless steel? Yes. Do I like plastic? No, it's the lesser of the evils.
And I'm sure there's other things that cause inflammation too. Everybody's a gluten-free diet. And I'm finding that I don't really react to the gluten if it's also soy-free. I was surprised how much bread and noodles and things that typically almost all the gluten-free stuff has soy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried the stuff with soy, and then I tried gluten-free and soy, and I felt worse than when I had just like wheat noodles that were clean wheat noodles.
Yeah, I know Laura really recommends going gluten-free, even with a nickel allergy, and not to gluten-free grains, but just grain-free. Like, I guess it would be grain-free in general. I can't go there. Y'all, I was gluten-free for 10 years and I had all the gluten out. When I heard gluten-free grains were high in nickel, I added all the gluten back in. I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. I'd probably do better without it, but
And I'm not a big bread eater. Oh my God, sourdough is my death. I love sourdough.
The good thing is it's usually safe for a nickel allergy.
Yeah.
But my neighbor makes sourdough and it's fabulous, but we have figured out, because she's tried this for me, when she makes a wheat sourdough, like sourdough with more whole wheat, I really react. But she's made me one where she does it in some way. I'm not a cook. Don't ask me about kitchen stuff, but she does it in some way where it makes it just white sourdough. Like she doesn't add any extra this or that. And I do so well with it.
It could also be the type of flour. So I picked up 2 just all-purpose baking flours in the grocery store and scanned one, and it had a red wheat flour in it that was not for nickel diets. And I picked up another that didn't have it, and it scanned okay for nickel diets.
And I mean, I would say, well done, Fig, for having an app that works.
It has made it's made shopping much easier, and I can actually look in the app and create my list before I even get to the grocery store and just scan the things that I'm not sure of.
And if people haven't seen it yet, I'm going to go to something real quick. I'm going to put this article up here. We are starting to make headlines. It is starting to get out. So this article, I don't know if you were able to read it, came out just a couple of weeks ago in the Epic Times. Nickel allergy, a common denominator for many with gastrointestinal diseases. Wow. And Amy Denny, writer for the Epic Times, interviewed Laura Duzette and another doctor and basically linked to a bunch of studies and talked about the low nickel diet. Now, Epic Times, you have to have a subscription. It's $3-4 a month. I think they have a promo. You can get it for $1 a month. And I've talked to Amy. We're going to be doing one on surgical implants very soon for the Epic Times, I believe. But this is a really cool thing, but this links to a bunch of studies. Now, I will say I did notice one error in this, I believe. She referenced Laura saying that they recommended 150 milligrams of nickel or less per day. It's micrograms.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's micrograms.
Micrograms, not milligrams. So that's actually, she probably should print some kind of correction there. But it links to studies about like severity of reactions. They link to an Academy of Nutrition and Diuretics study. There's several good studies that it links to here for nickel and Crohn's. And so like here, like a 2023 study in ProQuest found nickel sensitivity in 40% of 50 IBS patients. So if you go to this link, it pulls up nickel sensitivity in patients with irritable bowel syndrome. So again, more on the low nickel diet. Of course, I did a podcast episode with the Gut Check Project. He's gastroenterologist, Dr. Ken Brown, and he talked about the low nickel diets. We are starting to get the traction that we need to. I'm going to stop sharing this, but we are getting the traction. Finally, it's starting to get out there, but it's just all going to be talking and doctors thinking we're crazy and gaslighting us. And
they do. They think we're crazy. And I haven't even started to get into let's report that I did have an issue with the first knee. It never occurred to me that I needed to report that. I would have thought my revision doctor maybe would have done that.
Oh, don't feel bad. I have not done my own adverse event report. And guess what? That is the next episode. We are going to do the adverse event reporting because we all need to do that. There's not enough reports.
As a whole is overwhelming, right? But okay, you're doing the low nickel diet. Yes, I am. I am not to the point yet of counting my micrograms. I am to the point of just trying to cut out the things that I know I react to, right? Yeah. I know almonds, hands down, is one of them, which likely means other tree nuts. Because the day I did eat, I thought, I'm going to have, remember those nutty bars that have the little bit of ice cream with a few peanuts sprinkled on top? They set me off. I started coughing and I couldn't stop coughing. I was clearing my throat. So clearly tree nuts are huge for me and soy is huge for me. I'm cutting out the big things right now that I know, and I will start to the little things later because I've had such a drastic change picking 3 items, which are literally in everything anyway, how do I navigate eating around even those three things before I cut out even more? Because I do know if I just went cold turkey and cut it all out, I would give up after 3 days. And I don't want to do that. I want this to be a lifestyle change because I see the difference in how much better I feel, how much better I think, how much better I get around. I went to not even be able to get to my kitchen last year or in 22 to now I can walk from the parking lot to watch my son perform and back. I couldn't do that a year ago. And for that, I'm grateful, but I am still not normal. I don't feel good. I just feel better.
Now, I want to come back. We're going to have to close in just a minute, but I want to come back and ask you. So you talked about your carpal tunnel and your hysterectomy and your gastric bypass. Have any of those doctors agreed to remove the clips or staples and the hardware that they've implanted?
I'm no longer in those states because we have moved. We've lived in 5 states, but I have gotten my report from the gastric sleeve doctor. I have sent off for the ones for my hysterectomy, and I've got to look up the hand doctor out who did that surgery because it was so long ago, but it's one of the few places I still get really bad. I call them zingers because they're just excruciating when they happen. They don't last long, but when they happen, they're very painful. That goes down that arm. It's, again, nothing happens fast in this world. You can write off for something and it can take you a month to 3 months to do it. Or if you've got to schedule an appointment, we're booking 6 months out. I'm like, really?
I really lucked out in having... Yeah, I really lucked out because most of my surgeons removed my hardware the first time I asked. I cannot tell you that is the case. I can tell you that is not the case for 90% of my podcast guests. 90% of them, probably more than that, have had zero luck getting surgeons who are willing to even entertain removing their hardware. I'm working with 2 right now, and I'm trying to champion their cause before a few of my doctors because they're very severe cases. We did have one of our surgeons who was pretty willing to remove surgical clips and staples outside of the gallbladder, decided that that's not something he wants to do at this time. So that was unfortunate. At this point, I only know of one doctor who will remove biopsy markers, surgical clips and staples outside the gallbladder. I keep his name on the QT. If you need his name, feel free to DM me, but he will remove any surgical clip, staple, or biopsy marker in the soft tissue. So that is a huge win for the community, and we really need more that are willing to do that. So I'd be really interested in your follow-up with bariatric surgeons and
I imagine this journey is going to take me a few years, right? The fact that it takes you 6 months to get into one doctor to say, okay, we got to do this test, which is 3 months out, which is your results is another few weeks beyond that. So that's, for me, I am a doer. So once I figure something out, I want it done right now. I am not a patient person. That is not my strong suit. So this has been very frustrating for me. And luckily, I at least have a primary care who is going to help me. She's going to refer me where I need to be referred. She's going to learn the things she needs to learn to help me along this journey. And most people are not that lucky. I do think you have to keep going until you find that doctor you connect with. And I at least have to give the knee doctor here, while he may not agree that we needed to do this or look into this, he's willing to do it because I've asked. And they've been very upfront when I do my test. It's not going to pay for this test. It's not going to pay for a blood allergy test. You know what? I don't care. I'll pay for it out of pocket because honestly, if it helps cut down the figuring out what I need to eliminate, if I can eliminate the things I really truly am allergic to, and then figure out beyond that what triggers the nickel sensitivity. And I'm just learning that, I may need to take my antihistamines more than once a day to be able to feel better. I feel good until about 2:00 every day. And then I go downhill after that.
Oh, I'm the same way because I take my antihistamine in the morning.
Same.
Me personally, I take antihistamines 3 times a day. And if y'all notice I'm a little sleepy, it's because I'm taking way too many antihistamines because these clips need to come out Thursday. And so I'm wandering around like a drunk person through half my life. No, I take no pain meds, no other drugs, only antihistamines, and God bless it. It is
well, and they want me to come off
fun.
Antihistamines for 10 days before doing the blood allergy test. And that honestly scares the bejesus out of for the food allergies.
Oh.
That is what they said when I did call. I did call and ask, and they're like, yeah, 10 days. I
just did a blood test and I didn't have to come off anything.
Time. For food allergies?
But I came back. The interesting thing is I came back negative for all of them. It was an IgE blood test, but I don't think I have a lot of IgE in my body. I always come back negative. And it's things I know I reacted to. She tested nuts. She tested like all the nickel things. Don't show any reaction to them. But it's IgE, which is which is a immunoglobulin. And so it's not an IgE mediated allergy. It's a T cell and antigen driven allergies. But it's nice to know I don't have IgE allergies to the same thing. Now, it sounds like you find that you've got histamine issues with your allergies, with your type 4. So I don't know, but if you heard the last episode, but it was news to me that there can be both a type 4 and a type 1 delayed hypersensitivity reaction. And they're both antigen driven and T cell mediated. So that's really interesting to me too. But I have histamine as my major, like one of my major things. So I have both of them. But I don't show on any food test. I show negative to all of it.
And now that'll be interesting if mine came up that way too, where I clearly know by giving up almonds and soy, my ability to function and feel like a sort of normal human being was drastic. And sometimes you worry about trying to get your spouse on board. Okay, he loves to cook, but now I'm going to limit when you're home. He travels, but when he's home, he loves to cook. And now I'm saying you can't cook with all of these things. It limits what he can cook. And but I can already see the difference in you. Yeah. Like he noticed it.
You just want your wife back, your life back.
You want your life back. Yeah. You want to feel like you can participate in stuff and not be miserable. And it was funny when you start looking back at stuff, it'd be like, why, when I'm home, do I feel awful? But when I go out of town, I actually feel better. I wasn't drinking the almond creamer every day. I wasn't eating soy every day because typically when I get a hamburger, I would get it with no bun anyway, because I'm just not a huge bread eater. A lot of the bread has soy in it. And we weren't like, when I cook, I tend to use soy. And I wasn't eating a lot of the things that I'm finding flare me up. I wasn't eating those when I traveled. And I would come home think I'm being healthier, but I felt worse. And when I'm looking at what those were, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But you don't make those connections till after. There's so many things that you don't make the connections for.
Right. Yep. And for me, later, when I leave town, I do so much better, but it's not necessarily because of what I'm eating or not eating. For me, living in Texas, I have all the southern pollen. So I am so affected by the histamine burden in my body that by the time I'm out of town, I do so amazing until I come home and then the histamine wall hits me. So yeah, it's interesting between the food and the pollen, all the things that really affect us. We're going to need to close, but I am so grateful for the time you took to be here. I want to have you back when you figure out the rest of your knee journey and we'll tell the rest of the story. But I think you've really helped the people know that this really isn't just in our heads and what to look for. And you're my first knee allergy patient. So keep fighting for sure. What are your final thoughts? The last thing you want to say, anything we didn't cover?
Keep fighting when they do this scan or they do this test and they say, but it came back normal. Something has changed and you don't feel right. It took me almost a year to figure that out the first time. And it was to the point where and I don't want to say I was ever going to commit suicide, but those thoughts start creeping in your head. Like, why am I on this earth if I am this miserable? Mm-hmm. And I don't think I ever would have done it, but I don't like the fact that those thoughts ever crept into my head, but that's how bad I felt. And the doctors don't hear that from you. they see the one symptom, they test for the one symptom, and they don't look at the big picture. So that's why I thought it was really important to lay that spreadsheet out for my primary care and say, now, this was red after my first knee, but now it barely bothers me, this particular symptom. Some of them are better and some of them are not, but now we can see what things were affected by that. The biggest thing is to keep fighting, and it's okay to have the bad days. Those are the days I just binge watch and curl up,
and I always say it's temporary. We go through ebbs and flows. Someday, like yesterday, I could not move yesterday. And I honestly don't know what it is. We did have some wind and I spent a little more time outside, and I'm pretty triggered right now. I also didn't have some great food, but I could not move yesterday. And instead of going down the rabbit hole, I just today's just today. It's temporary. Yeah. I just did practice self-care all day and got up today. Today's a better day. So it's just, you got to just wait for those better days. And I always say that I would go through everything I went through all over again, just to be able to help the people I'm helping. And your story is going to help people too. So really appreciate you being here. I'm going to go ahead and close out, but I want to tell everybody that we'll put some links in the show notes that'll be helpful in reference to today's show. If you want to tell your story about metal hypersensitivity, please reach out to me via the podcast website and help us be part of this community that tells the medical establishment that we're not going to take it anymore. Okay, guys, I'm bringing Julene back on for a little postscript update. We had edited the episode. We're getting ready to release it. She's like, wait, there's more. So we decided to jump on and add the more before we release the episode. So you have a little more of the picture instead of doing another episode weeks or months from now and you've forgotten what happened in the episode before. So welcome back, Julene. I hear you have news.
I do. Well, as I've said, it is a work in progress. This takes time. Doctor's appointments take time, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
In the meantime, one of the things I did go do is actually get allergy testing. They tested me for 100 items, like 53 foods and 47 plus environmental factors. I tested negative for literally everything.
I had the same thing happen. I have a theory. I don't know if this is your theory or what happened with me. I don't know if you've had your total immunoglobulins tested, but I had my total immunoglobulins tested and they're in the tanker. And my personal theory, hypothesis of Sherry here, is that my total IgA level is so low that when they do the test, it just brings it up to what would be normal for another person. So I don't show literally reactive on almost any food test, including the high nickel food test. They come back looking like I'm spot on normal, which just is going to make all the doctors think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I don't know what your experience was, but I test the exact same way on the food IgE, IgA, IgG allergy tests.
I'm still learning all the difference between all of those.
Me too.
I just went in just to kind of say, is there something I really need to be avoiding, right? I did sort of react teeny tiny bit to Brazil nuts, which nobody really eats unless you're eating those mixed nuts, and I avoid nuts. And she even said, oh, that's not even really a reaction.
That's not a thing.
Interestingly, though, corn, and of course I didn't know they were just numbered up and down my arms, right? And I was like, whatever this one is, it is itching, but it didn't swell up and appear like an allergy, but it itched. And she goes, okay, we'll make note of that. She made note of that. And then they came back and did another set where they did the injection under the arm. And the same thing, I'm like, whatever number, whatever is, I'm about to tear my arm out. Both were corn of some sort. One was corn pollen, one was corn. But
I never to corn.
Really reacted to it as far as swelling, redness. It was just strictly an itch, which was odd.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, that's not a reaction. So I'm like, well, okay, I don't really eat it anyway, so I'll just keep avoiding it. So that helped me say, okay, I am then reacting to nickel in foods, or I have something else in my digestion going on because I have had the gastric sleeve and I do have staples. Is this the issue? So now I'm in the process of going down that road and saying, okay, let's get an endoscope and just check everything. So I'm in the process of getting that in a few weeks. So again, it's like step by step by step.
Yeah.
I did have a scan for clips in because I was having zingers in my elbow and my wrist where I had carpal tunnel and an ulnar nerve surgery. or x-ray, and they said there's no metal. I also had the vaginal ultrasound and whatnot, and they said there was no metal from those surgeries. And based on the type of surgery, she was pretty confident going in there I wouldn't have clips. So that, I guess, is good news. So now we're continuing to rule things out, which is great.
I do have a very, very close friend who was told by 3 radiologists and multiple gynecologists she had no clips and no staples. And one of the surgeons who did a prior podcast episode for me pulled 130 staples out of her stomach.
And that's interesting because I was like, this is the only place that I get the zingers. It is where I had a surgery. How can there not be clips or staples?
Did you see the clip episode? I think it was, oh gosh, what episode was it? Episode 12, somewhere back there was the one on surgical clip and staple removals. And he said, so you have to confirm with your op report. So do the x-ray, but confirm with your op report. And then also a CT scan without contrast will really help confirm, because a lot of times it's layers upon layers. And if you get the contrast lights up the same color, the clips and staples. So you've got to have it without contrast. But if you still have your doubts, and because my friend had this experience for real legit, her story's unbelievable. And all of her 10 years of pelvic pain went away like overnight when he pulled out these 130 clips and staples. And he actually, I think, missed a few or didn't get a few, or they weren't safe to get or whatever. But all her pelvic pain went away when she woke up. And if she had listened to those doctors and radiologists, the x-rays that said no clips, no staples, she'd still be sick.
Every time I go to a doctor, I learn something new too. I've been having a lot of pelvic pain. And one doctor said, oh, well, you're 50. Why don't you start taking estrogen? And so I started using the estrogen cream. Well, lo and behold, because I've had endometriosis, that actually feeds the endo. So as soon as I stopped the endometriosis cream, a lot of my pelvic pain went away. So every time I go to a doctor, I learn something new.
I know. And I got to bring this up. So people that don't know my journey, or some that do, and I don't even think I've done an update on this. So you're getting it first here. So this is all connective tissue related, right? If you have connective tissue diseases and EDS, a lot of people think you're predisposed to metal hypersensitivity, which I'm finding also predisposed to something rare that I had, which was Tarlov cysts on the nerve roots of my sacrum. Tarlov cyst disease is a connective tissue related thing. I have this new diagnosis, lipedema. Have you ever heard of lipedema?
We briefly, I think after we hung up, talked about it because I question whether I have it. And I don't even know who to talk about it.
You can talk to me about it later, but basically for the listeners who we're going to touch on it and then we'll move on, and I'll come back because it's connective tissue related. And if you have EDS and metal allergies and thyroid disease, and you have connective tissue disorders and you have inflammation, it's all about inflammation. Look at lipedema. It is the abnormal storage of adipose fat tissue in the butt, hips, and thighs, sometimes in the upper arms. Yep. It looks like obesity. It looks like cellulite. There is not a test for it. It's a clinical diagnosis. It follows lymphatic, like swelling in the limbs, not lymphedema, lipedema. Yeah. So swelling bilaterally, inflammation, sluggish lymph system, easy bruising, super heavy feeling legs, and fatigue. It's 11% of women, typically only women. It is men in rare cases. It's 11%. It's genetic, usually 11% of women, and typically undiagnosed. So many doctors don't even know what it is. I'm going for my first lipedema reduction surgery in Greece. Thankfully, these surgeries don't use any metal. January 10th. So that is another part of my picture. It may be part of yours.
I'll be interested to hear what you say after your surgery, because it is on my to-do list to look into, because like you said, I do have the ones that look like kind of rocks under my skin and stuff like that. But,
and you can feel it. It feels like rocks under the skin.
Yep. Agreed. One thing, that you have to reiterate is this journey is taking years. And because every time I go to a doctor, I learn a little bit, or they tell me to do something. And then the next doctor says, oh no, don't do that. Now we got to go back and do this, so the journey takes forever. And so why I've had to come back on is after we moved to Pennsylvania and I saw that first doctor who said, oh, metal allergies are phooey, right? I moved on to my next doctor. I liked him, didn't have any issues with him, but went on to Mayo to get a third opinion because I wanted to make sure I had 2 doctors that were saying the same thing about my leg. And Mayo, yes, it needs to be replaced. Your femur is loose. When I came back from Mayo, I was having a an appointment with my primary care, who I love, and she said, I had a client who saw a doctor who's into metal allergies and whatnot. Do you want me to get you an appointment? I said, hands down, get me an appointment. Waited a while, got in there. The first thing he said to me is, I don't think your implant is actually nickel free. Let me call the manufacturer. So the doctor who did my revision,
the new one, the new knee,
the revision knee, she wouldn't even see me or do a revision until I took a metal allergy test.
Mm-hmm.
According to this doctor, he was on the cell phone with the manufacturer, and I could hear the guy on the other end. He said, the tibial part is titanium, no nickel. The femur part does contain nickel. That's the part that's loose now, according to now 2 doctors, and this third one that I just saw. The bad part is, he's like, if you replace your entire leg, again, every time you do a revision, you get rid of more and more bone. It's really bad to do that. The new nickel-free portion of your leg will not be out for about 15 months. It hasn't gone through the process yet.
And that's conservatively that amount of time.
He thought it's supposed to come out in 3 to 6, so that means 12 to 15. So that was kind of his guesstimate. So do I wait 15 more months? In the meantime, I was like, I cannot believe I just found that out. Now, I haven't called the manufacturer myself. I'm trusting that what I heard coming from the other end of the cell phone was correct. And so I messaged Mayo and I said, okay, I just found out my femur has nickel in it. I definitely want to do a revision. What are you going to do to guarantee I have a nickel-free knee? What knee implant are you going to use? His response, oh, I don't use any nickel-free implants. But wait a minute. We sat in your office.
So you could have had another revision with more wrong hardware. Guys, it is important to get your hardware composition from your rep, from your doctor, and look at it with your eyeballs.
I left that appointment in tears when I found that out. It took me days to get over the fact that she could do that, knowing I had such a bad reaction. Now,
and knee replacement is not a walk in the park. It's excruciating.
It's excruciating. It is excruciating.
And the therapy and the dollars on the medical system that raise our insurance premiums.
Yep. It's crazy. So I did ask him, I'm like, okay, if you don't use any implants that are nickel free, he said, most surgeons only use a couple of implants. He said, that's the ones we're comfortable with. He said, I would recommend you go to a hospital of special surgery in New York. So now I'm in the process of doing that. I had to go through 3 doctors to find anybody that would even use the Smith & Nephew Legion, I believe it is, the Legion knee. Again, still in the process of doing all the research. And so they require, before I can even get an appointment, to get all my reports and all my x-rays, MRIs, which I have called and I've asked for all that to be sent. They have all the reports, but they still won't schedule until they have all the actual CDs.
There will definitely be a Julene part 3 episode. Well, I guess it'll be an official part 2 episode on the other side of this.
But anyway, so I'm in the process now of trying to get into the hospital for special surgery because it is only 3.5 hours, which logistically is a whole lot easier.
Specialized surgery to replace just the femur component is 3 hours?
That's the part I have to talk to him about because according to, one doctor, he's like, well, you don't really mix and match parts, which,
that's probably a good idea.
Probably a good thing, right?
That's smart to me.
So I think I would like to talk with, do I wait the 15 months and just replace the femur? Or do we say, okay, this is a better option based on all of the issues I've had? Is it worth the risk of doing a full component replacement? I want to talk about that. And again, that's why I'm not rushing into this my 3rd time. Luckily, I did not go to Mayo. Luckily, I didn't have the doctor here do it. I would have had yet another nickel knee and I would have been right back at square one. Now,
things happen for a reason. If you are slow enough and you listen to that little voice and you listen to intuition and you put a pregnant pause before you just rush into another surgery with somebody that says they have the answer.
And if I had been knowledgeable enough or run across your group before this surgery, where would I be? Would I have a different knee? Would I not be going through a revision, right? Would I have done research differently? The hard part is when you also work full time and you have a family, this starts to kind of take the back burner sometimes, right? And so it takes forever to get through these and to get the appointments. Again, still waiting on a rheumatology appointment and just waiting and waiting and waiting for all the different appointments. I will get there. And some days, like today, I'm having a good day. I've been eating very well. I'm not inflamed.
Talking to several friends of mine who were like really struggling in the fall and they're doing great right now. And I'm like, why, right? Because like my experience, all that fall pollen is out of the air and it's rainier and it's snowier and the allergens aren't bothering us. So the systemic symptoms aren't as strong. That's my experience and that of many people I know. So
I love the Christmas lights. They make me happy. I have a couple of very short quick trips planned. So I have something to look forward to. So it's not all about the pain that I'm feeling. And one thing the allergist did do is he said, okay, technically you're not allergic to anything, but if you are having symptoms, if you're having systematic symptoms when you eat things with nickel, then let's adjust your allergy meds this way. And I did that. And it really actually significantly helped me. Just a little tweak on that. So every time I do learn something new. I have days where I'm crying, I am mad, I'm angry, I want to scream.
Yep.
And it takes me a few days of complaining to my poor best friend who has heard it all.
Well, and the financial toll of these diseases. I mean, this lipedema surgery is just now starting to be covered in the US, and I'm cash paying to go to Europe overseas for the surgery because I'm in so much pain and I don't want to wait the 2 or 3 years to appeal to insurance to pay what their policy says they're going to pay, and to find the right doctor and to find the doctor who's competent in lipedema surgery that is new and newer in the US. But man, just the toll emotionally and financially that these diseases take and the ignorance takes. And again, not bashing doctors. They just don't have time. They're not afforded the time to learn what they need to learn to help us through stuff that's on the fringe.
I am in the process of watching that bleeding edge. Floored. And the fact that only 2% report negative, issues
and
with
we just did the adverse event reporting episode. It is actually not as hard as I thought it would be. I don't know if I did it exactly right, but something is better than nothing. We've got to file these adverse event reports.
That's on my to-do list. Here's kind of my thought process. And again, I've gone through the revision, so I can file the adverse effect on the first one. Because we know now, once she opened up the knee, what she saw the looseness of the plates this way and that way and blah, blah, blah. So now, do I need to wait until I go through the second revision to say, okay, here's what was found, and not just report a negative effect until we know the actual outcome of what they see? Because again, with the knee, even through imaging, they don't get what they need until they get in there and look at it.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen The Bleeding Edge, please go see it. I'm surprised how many people in the community haven't seen it. Go watch The Bleeding Edge. It's a Netflix production.
It is quite eye-opening. And interestingly enough, I almost ended up with one of those implants that
get your free Netflix trial and watch
considered about it, and I was like, I'm so glad I did not do that. I would have done that 10, 15 years ago when my kids were little, and I would have missed their whole childhood. If I'm reacting this way to this knee.
Well, and I'm going into some of these lipedema communities for lipedema reduction surgery. It, by and large, is liposuction and doesn't use any metal, but these people having thigh lifts and tummy tucks and skin revisions, they can. So it's each new community I make my way into and scream out about clips and staples like, what? Oh my gosh. I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but trying to say, slow down, due diligence, make sure you're not allergic.
It would be interesting. I'm not old yet, I'm not retired yet. When I have the time to fight the fight, I would love to say, how do we at least make adverse reporting mandatory by a doctor who goes in to correct it? It doesn't matter.
And the doctors aren't mandatory reporting. They don't have time.
Well, right. But make it some kind of administrative function. Make it a bill, pass a law that when she did my revision, what happened, what she saw had to be reported.
Here's the thing. Did you go back to the doctor that did the revision that put the femur component in that was nickel and say, what gives?
I didn't, strictly because we were right in the process of a move when that happened.
Are you going to go back?
That is the plan when I get my reports.
And say, what were you thinking?
They didn't know I didn't have a metal test. It's not required.
So I'm going back from my own memory. You didn't have a metal test prior to the first revision.
I did not have a metal test prior to my first one, so I don't feel like I have any recourse there.
Okay.
Other than...
Fair enough.
Up.
I'm going to bring this in because this is the next episode coming after you. Hang on. Have you seen this yet?
I actually saw it pop up on one of the Facebook pages.
The Sensi Band Metal Allergy Test Kit. Available over the counter without your doctor. This is the next episode, guys. Just did an episode with the spine surgeon who invented Sensi Band. We're actually giving it away. So tune into the next episode to find out how you can win a Sensi Band test kit, both dental and surgical.
I'll be curious because I would like to do one just because I never had the skin patch test. I have had the blood test. I don't tend to react very negatively on my skin to nickel, but I would be curious what kind of reaction I have if I wore it for the...
You'll tune into the episode. It's interesting because they said the patch testing that dermatologists use a metal salt for the patch test. This is actually the pure metal that is used for the Sensi Band test. It's a surgeon-designed, FDA-approved Class 1 device. It was a very interesting interview with the surgeon inventor of that device, and that's the next episode. That's going to be good.
Yeah. Again, still in the process. Still learning, taking my time. You know, the further I get into this low nickel diet, the better I get. I am more mobile than I've been.
And you're such a great outspoken advocate online for metal allergies. Guys, it's so important to chime in, comment, like, share, not for my glory, but for the algorithm. So it gets out to people. Everybody needs to comment, like, and share because it's the only way it gets out.
Yeah. And there's days like when I want to jump on Facebook and post something on my page, but I don't want to be nasty and ugly. I don't want people to think I'm just resentful. I'm not. It sucked. What happened. And I have days that I can't handle it. And those are the days I want to just go blast the doctors. But again, they don't have the time to learn the stuff. And if you do like I did, right, after your first one, you have a negative reaction. You've gone back a couple of times and said, I hurt, I'm having issues, these things are happening. You're fine. It just takes time. You get pissed and you leave. And you go to a new doctor. So that doctor actually truly never knows what happened.
And why are they using nickel of any kind in any implants? I just don't get it. When you have 20% plus of the population allergic to a metal, why is it a component? I'm sorry.
Well, and listening to some of these other metal issues. But one of the interesting things that happened that she said in the bleeding edge or cutting edge, I can't remember the name.
It's the bleeding edge.
It's because my brain doesn't work right.
No worries.
100% this happens to me. She says, I lose the last word of a sentence.
All the time.
Every noun. Like I'll start a sentence and I'll try to find the word chair or blanket or whatever.
Yeah.
I cannot find that word.
Yeah.
And that has been honestly one of the biggest. The pain is awful. But when you feel stupid.
Yes.
And the brain fog is beyond brain fog.
Yep. The thing I noticed 2 months ago when I woke up from having those little metal plates out of my pelvis is I could do math in my head again the minute I woke up.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that part is really frustrating to me. And it frustrates my kids. Now, my kids are almost graduated in college.
I know.
But, they make fun of you all the time. And I'm like, look, I wouldn't be doing that if I had a choice. If I could find that word, I know what it is. If I'm looking at it, I can say
and I forget things that happen all the time. My son's like, we talked about this. I'm like, no, we didn't.
All the time.
No, we didn't. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I don't remember. Sorry.
I'm
just tell me again. So,
terrible.
But trying to move forward. Today is a good day. The sun is out. It's not really cold. It feels good.
Yeah, well, speak for yourself. It's rainy here.
Last week, 3-4 days ago, I had a day I was laying in bed and could barely move because I decided to make taco soup with everything I knew that I could eat, except I added 1 can of tomatoes from a can. And I was like, oh, I'll be okay. I was not okay. I'm finding that it affects me that much and that it's not worth it. And I pay for it for 2 or 3 days. And just in the process of getting rid of some of those inflammatory foods, and my doctor's been great, I've lost even just 20 pounds. And 20 pounds is the equivalent of getting several hundred pounds off of your knee. For every pound you lose, it's 7 pounds off your knee. That has made me even more mobile than I was. Now I have a long way to go.
Right.
But every time I get that inflammation down, I feel better.
Well, thanks, Julene, for coming back and giving us the first postscript. I'm looking forward to seeing how you are on the other end. It may be a year before you're able to come back and tell us. But as always, thank you for coming back and adding this into this little episode. Hope it helps somebody.
I hope so. That's the goal. We reach one person who reaches somebody else who reaches somebody else.
Keep on reaching, y'all.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in today. Please don't forget to follow me on social media and to like, share, and subscribe. My primary mission is reaching out to others who may be suffering from hypersensitivity reactions to metal implants and pointing them to resources that can assist with hope, help, and healing. If you know someone that suffers from a chronic illness, you might ask if they have any implanted metal hardware and if they've ever had a reaction to jewelry or metals of any kind. Might not even be on their radar. Visit us at heavilymetal.com where you can find images and documentation relating to our show today, as well as a number of valuable resources and links to assist you on your own personal healing journey. Until next time, keep on rocking.